Underneath the hood of the Tucson, there are 3 different engine choices that are available. So the base engine is a 2.5 liter, and then there's the option for 2 different 1.6 turbos. So it's either a traditional hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. This one has the regular 2.5 liter engine, which pushes out 187 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque. Well, it's not the most powerful version by any stretch, but getting back up to highway speed here, let's see how quickly it can do it. So we're going from 0 to 100 in 3, 2, and 100. So not the best by any stretch, but I mean, it's got an acceptable amount of power. So if you're just looking for a car to get you from A to B, the 2.5 liter engine is a pretty good option. Then you've got that 1.6 liter traditional hybrid, which is a step above, gives you better fuel economy. And then the plug-in hybrid, which has a little bit more power, but also gives you fully electric driving. But whether you go with the regular gas engine or the hybrids, are going to come down to budget and what you're looking for in your ride. Now, looking at the hybrid world, the traditional hybrid doesn't have any fully electric mileage available. It just gives you better overall fuel economy. In comparison to the plug-in hybrid, you get actual fully electric mileage with the added benefit of getting some great fuel economy as well. But I'll touch on that one in just a second. But underneath the hood here is nice and simple. You can easily top up your fluids, check change oil, and then there's easy access to the battery as well. And then the warranty inside of the Hyundai world is pretty good. In Canada, the basic and powertrain are 5 years, 100,000 kilometers. South of the border in the US, your basic warranty is going to be a 5-year, 60,000 mile, with the powertrain getting bumped up to an impressive 10-year, 100,000 mile instead. And then your hybrid EV components would be covered for 8 years. I would love to see that 10-year warranty in Canada, but regardless of which side of the border you live on, there's always the option of increasing the warranty at time of purchase if you need that extra peace of mind. The front end style of the Tucson is pretty neat. Now, one thing that I do like about the Tucson, the way that the lights look at night, the styling of them, I think is pretty solid. This one, because it's the XRT, has a blacked out Hyundai badge in the front and then just black all the way throughout. I do like the overall grille styling inside of the ride here. Inside of the Tucson, there is the option for a surround view monitor, so a full 360 camera. It's not going to be available in the majority of trim levels, so it's strictly going to be the higher trims. So there is the option for that full 360 cam, but regardless of the trim, you're never going to find a forward sensing system. So that's not available in any trim level of the Tucson. Pricing for the Tucson in Canada starts at around $37,400 versus a little over $30,000 down in the US. And the pricing is going to go up depending on which trim level that you're in, and if you've gone for the regular gas engine, the traditional hybrid, or the plug-in hybrid, with the plug-in being the more expensive option. So there are different options that you can look at inside of this ride. This Tucson is in the Ecotronic gray matte exterior. And I gotta say, I really love the way that matte paints look, just the flatness of them. It's so different than the metallic paints that you're typically going to find. I'm in Canada, so it can be a little bit tricky to keep these things clean in the winter time, but even still, it looks really sharp. One of the differences between the pricing in Canada versus the US outside of the exchange rate is the drivetrain. By default, you're going to find the Tucson in the US with front-wheel drive, with the option of moving into an all-wheel drive system instead. Versus in Canada, all-wheel drive is our option. And honestly, I prefer all-wheel drive anyways. You don't get as good fuel economy, but the wintertime snowy, slippery handling is way better in comparison. You can still be okay front-wheel drive as long as you've got a good set of winners, but all-wheel drive, it's just a night and day difference. As always, there are a series of different wheel sizes and styles available inside of the Tucson. So you're at least a 17, moving into an available 19-inch wheel. Inside of the XRT, it's going to be an 18-inch wheel standard. And the robotic kind of design inside of the XRT is pretty funky looking. What do you think? It stands out for sure. It's bright, it's bold, it's kind of demanding attention, like this matte paint. Looking at the size of the Tucson, so for reference, I'm 6 feet tall. and I can clearly see over this car. You do have the option for crossbars, so if you need to throw on a roof rack carrier, you've got that available as an option. And getting inside of the car is also incredibly straightforward. First row, easy enough. Second, equally as easy. And one of the nice things about the Tucson is that you've got assist handles across all 4 doors. So first, second row, both sides have assist handles. Inside of the Tucson, you're going to find manual folding side view mirrors that have turn signals there, along with a blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody enters the blind spot, it's going to highlight there to let you know. As long as you've got the key fob on you, Intelligent Access lets you push there to lock the door, slide your hand in and push in order to unlock. Get to that inside in a second here. Got this interesting little highlight along the door, but the buttons here are the same across the board. So you've got your side view mirror adjust, window controls, kill off power to the rear windows with some door storage. This one has the upgraded Bose audio system. And these are the rubberized trays you're going to find from the factory. Way easier to clean down than the regular carpeted mats. Seat-wise, there are a few different options that are available. So cloth seats, leatherette, or a full leather seat with power available in the majority of trim levels. And some trims also have the option for driver's seat memory as well. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Hyundai Tucson. You might have a heated steering wheel inside of your Tucson. If you do, just down the middle there on your climate settings, there's the option of toggling on your heated steering wheel with 2 unique levels. You've got your heated first row seats there as well. Now on top of that, the steering wheel is going to be manual telescoping. So just down by your left knee, there's a release there. You can go in, out, up and down, so full telescoping to find that perfect position. Once you do, click it and you're good to go. There are so many things that you need to know about the ride. So we'll start off with the buttons along the left-hand side. So these are going to be for your smart cruise or your adaptive cruise control system. So you can toggle it on this way, and that's going to set it at whatever your current speed is. From there, you can push up or down in order to increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time. But if you push and hold up or push and hold down, it's going to bring you to the nearest 0 kilometers an hour or 5 miles per hour, 5 or 0. So let's say if you're at 37 kilometers an hour, push and hold up, it'll bring you to 40, 50, 60, etc. Push and hold down, it'll do the opposite. You can hit the brake to pause your speed. You can hit the middle button there to pause your speed and then push in again to resume your previously set speed. And then there's also a distance indicator. So it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. So 4 unique levels, think of that like a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi for how close or far you are away from that leading vehicle. It's strictly going to be adaptive cruise, so no traditional cruise control. But if you want to see how the cruise control system actually works in person, check down in the description of this video for a fuller walkthrough on how it's done. And there's also this little feller, and that's the full lane centering system, so lane follow assist. Where that one comes into play is as long as the system's turned on, so you'll notice a steering wheel appear inside of the cluster screen, and that means that the system is enabled. Now, in order for it to actually fully become functional, it has to recognize the lane markings. Once it does, it becomes green, and then it's going to perfectly keep you balanced and centered into your lane. So even if your hands are off the steering wheel for a second because you've lost focus, you're rubbernecking like an idiot, it's going to keep you nice and balanced in your lane. It's a phenomenal system. Not full self-driving though, because you do have to be paying attention because eventually it tells you that you've got to put your hands back on the steering wheel. But it gets really, really close at the same time. You've got a Pages button here that's going to navigate you through the cluster, and then a scroll wheel to get to some additional options too. But I'll show you that one as we dive deeper in. Along this side, you've got a voice command prompt. Now this is specifically for your Android or iPhone devices. So if you're connected over Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, etc., you'd be able to push in order to activate either your Siri or Google Assistant. There's a volume rocker there. You can push in the middle to mute. You can also answer or hang up on a phone call. And then there are a few different buttons. So this one is going to let you change between all of your available presets. You can also push and hold up or push and hold down instead, so either way, in order to be able to seek out to different stations. Then there's a mode button, and that's going to change you between all of your selected sources. So inside of the infotainment system, you could jump into your setup and then your buttons, and that gives you the flexibility of adjusting what each button does. So mode is going to let you change between all of your available sources, versus this custom button is going to do certain things like jump to the home screen or whatever you have it set to there instead. So straightforward. Then you've got paddle shifters inside of the ride. So you're minus on the left-hand side, plus on the right-hand side. So minus in order to essentially drop gears if you wanted the vehicle to pick up your RPMs to launch you forward, or to rely on engine braking and then increase gears as necessary. But if you've never used paddle shifters before, in order to use them, it's straightforward. But I've put together a walkthrough video on how to use them. You can find that down in the description of this video. Now let's talk about all of our stocks, because you've got 3 different ones. So the one on the left-hand side is going to be for your lights. So you've got your lights option there along the left-hand side. You're going to be in the auto mode the majority of the time. But the thing about the auto mode is that you can't permanently lock your high beams out. You can flash them no problem, but in order to lock them out, you have to go into the upper headlamp mode instead. You can then push away to turn those high beams on, pull towards you in order to turn them off. But like I said, auto mode the majority of the time. You've got your blinkers there. Along the right-hand side is going to be for your wipers. So single down is going to be just one wipe. You can go up a level to get to your intermittent or auto mode. You can then use the rocker switch in the middle to control how fast or slow you want those wipers going instead, going to a few other options. Along the far right side, you've also got the option of toggling your rear wiper on there instead. You're going to pull towards you for the front wiper fluid. You're going to push away in order to get the rear wiper fluid going instead. Then you've got your shifter along the right side. So in order to use it, all you have to do is hit the brake. You're going to flip up to get into drive, lightly drop to get to neutral, all the way down to get to reverse. And then there's also a P button on the side, and that's going to put you into park instead. This version of the Tucson strictly has your traditional camera, so your traditional backup camera. It doesn't have the full surround view or 360 cam. Some trim levels of the vehicle have a full 360 cam. On top of that, the ones that have the 360 cam would also have the blind spot view monitor. So when you hit the turn stalk to go left or right, it's going to show you what's going on in your blind spot right inside of the cluster. It's a really, really cool system. But using that shifter, really straightforward. It takes a little bit of getting used to dropping into neutral, but once you figure it out, there's like that little touch. You just got to touch it the right way, and then it'll listen. Then, along the left-hand side, you've got a few different switches by your left knee, and you'd have the flexibility of adjusting the brightness of the cluster screen if you'd like to. You can open up your trunk, there's traction control, and then your parking brake. So to turn the parking brake on, you're just going to pull the button towards you. And that's going to toggle the parking brake on. To turn it off, you're going to hit the brake, you're going to push away, and that's going to toggle the parking brake off instead. Inside of the cluster screen, you've got your speedometer off to the left-hand side, tachometer off to the right-hand side, your current fuel level that's done a few different ways. So you've got your traditional gauge, and then kilometers or miles till empty. You've also got your current engine temperature, whether or not the auto hold system or the auto start-stop system are toggled on or off. There's also the current outside temperature, what gear you're currently in, so whether that's drive, neutral, reverse, park, etc. If you had a Tucson that had the reverse park sensing system, that would also show up there as well. So you'd be able to see those sensors along the outside. And then you've also got some of the other buttons there. So if you had the lane centering system turned on, turned off, etc., that would be there. If you had cruise control, smart cruise, you can't toggle it on when you're parked, but if that was available, you'd see your speed along the top side there too. Then you've got your pages button here. So pages will let you jump between 2 individual pages. So you can see that along the very bottom. So your first one would be all of your trip counters. So you've got your current trip. That's from your last ignition cycle. So from when you last turned the vehicle on. Scrolling down a level brings you into since refueling. So the last time you filled the vehicle up, how far have you gotten? You go one more time, and that's going to be your total trip counter instead. And you'll notice that you've got the option of resetting. So all you're going to do is on any of these screens, if you wanted to reset, you're just going to push and hold the OK button, and that's going to recenter you back to 0. Then you'll also notice, if you see on the very bottom, so you've got your total trip counter, how long it's been running, your average fuel economy, but there's a little gauge along the bottom here too. So this one, we've been driving and we've averaged 10 liters per 100. It's been brutal because I'm just sitting here doing explainer videos. But along the side here, You can see it's going to denote that we're at 10 liters or 10.1 liters per 100 now instead. So if your fuel economy gets better in Canada, it's going to go left. If it gets better in the States, it's going to go right. So the difference between miles per gallon versus liters per 100. But that's going to essentially be the same indicator as what you've got on the average level here. Moving down a level is going to be your start-stop system, tire pressure, which you have to be actively driving in order to see. And then also your power distribution. So because we're in the all-wheel drive version, it's which wheel gets which amount of power, but that screen's not going to be visible across the board. And then you're going to have a slightly different gauge setup as well if you've got the hybrid, where there's a charge versus power gauge as well. But if you want to walk through on a hybrid version, you'll find that down in the description of this video. But if we look at spacing, seat's already as far down as it'll go. I'm 6 feet tall, and with the driver's seat set up this way, I've got, I'd probably say 3.5, teetering on 4 inches of headspace. So an acceptable amount of space inside of the ride. And the seat is fairly comfortable too, inside of this trim. Now this is the XRT, which means that we're looking at a leatherette seat, but I like the XRT badges that you're gonna find on the first row seats there. Just something different. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Hyundai Tucson. The Tucson does have 2 different varieties of this screen. So they're both 12.3 inch. It's just that one of them has factory navigation versus this one that doesn't. But regardless, you can still hook up over your phones if you wanted to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze through Apple devices, or Google Maps and Waze through Android devices, which I'll touch on as we dive into the phone. But let's hop in. Starting off along the top left-hand side, you can hit this in order to jump into profile settings. The benefit there is that you can actively change the user. So if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, there are 3 different profiles that are available. So it's driver 1, driver 2 versus the guest profile. The guest profile is going to have some limitations in comparison to the other user profiles, specifically when you get into vehicle diagnostic data and then rebooting the screen, things like that. On top of that, you hit here, and you've got the option of going into an online manual. And all you have to do is scan the QR code on your phone. So you're just going to pop the phone up, click on the link, and that's going to launch you into the fully digital owner's manual instead. So if this video doesn't help out, or if you're getting weird messages inside of the cluster, the online manual here will be able to help you out instead. Hopping back home, you've got this little tab along the top. So you've got your date and time that you can tap in order to adjust the time, but there's this little bar you can swipe down as well in order to get to a quick launch tray, and that gives you a few other options. You can adjust the screen brightness, put the vehicle into quiet mode, which means it's only going to play audio through the front speakers, or you hit the little gear icon and that lets you do a few other things. So you can add in additional options. From here, you hit done, and then you can see a few other options here. So if you wanted to get a screen beep, you've got that flexibility. So you've got the option of adding in different options here. You can mute out the screen beep, change other options there instead, and then up with the quick launch tray. You've also got a few different connections. So as of right now, there's a phone sitting on the wireless charge pad. If I pull that off, you'll see that that message disappears as well. You've got the current time along the top right. Tapping the time will allow you to adjust the date and time that way. Diving into media, you've got a bunch of options. So you've got AM, FM, SiriusXM. There's a button along the bottom here. So these guys, so that's going to be AM, FM, SiriusXM. This one is going to be additional options. So you've got your Bluetooth audio, sounds of nature, USB music, and things like that. So if you had a USB stick strictly with MP3s on there, you'd be able to listen to audio that way. Then you've got all of your available favorites. So those are the stations that you've saved out as your favorited stations. If you hop into either AM or FM or even SiriusXM, see how there's a star icon there. So anything with a star next to it is a favorited station. So you can remove it if you'd like to. And then all you're going to do is just tap on whatever stations you want to add to your favorite list for AM, FM, or SiriusXM. So you just go through, star it whichever ones you'd like to. SiriusXM gives you category searches. So if you wanted to look for music, sports, talk, etc. On the very bottom right side, there's also this screen. So you can tap that in order to go into kind of like a fuller screen, looking at the album art as well. On our either AM or FM along the bottom here. So you can either go back a page, you can go back home, or hit the little hamburger icon, which is going to bring up this screen so you can scan the FM stations. If you're new to an area and you're not sure what you can listen to, just hit refresh. You can manually tune stations this way instead. So kind of like an old school slider, which is kind of neat. Hopping back a page, hitting this again brings you into radio noise. You can enter a station yourself that way if you'd like to. That's going to tune to that station. Back out, there are some additional sound settings too. So sound settings, dynamic speed, automatically increases the volume just depending on how fast you're going. With the startup volume maximizer, if you turn the vehicle off, you turn it back on again, it just won't be cranked. So if you're listening to audio cranked, turn it off, back on again, it won't be cranked. Adjusting the position will let you adjust out either the balance or the fade this way if you'd like to. Bring it back to center, you can adjust it out so that it's driver focused, rear focused, whatever the case may be, or back to center. Tone gives you a few other options, so adjusting your treble, mid-range, and bass. In my opinion, I found that in the Tucson with the upgraded audio system, this sounds pretty good. But what I'd recommend is play one of your favorite songs, and while the song is playing, go out and adjust these settings until it sounds perfect for you. Or you can bring everything back to center if you'd like to. Guidance, nothing exciting there. When you first start the vehicle up, do you want to get a little welcome sound? Radio noise, nothing exciting. Driver assistance settings, so all of the different warning sounds and things like that that you get, you can adjust these out. So if you start to veer over into another lane, if there's somebody in your blind spot, you can get a notification. There's a haptic warning, so if you start to veer over into another lane or if there's a warning system going off, it's going to give you a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, almost as if you're running over rumble pavement or there's something wrong with your alignment. There's not, it's just that there's something going on. Driving safety priority, parking safety priority, what these are going to do is it's going to lower the speaker audio. So if you're listening to music, it's going to lower that music so that you can hear any sort of other assistant settings that are coming on, so any notifications. Connected devices for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, you'd have the flexibility of adjusting out different volumes. So if you wanted your media volume at a different level, your phone volume, ringtone, etc., you can adjust all of these out to whatever levels you'd like to. Hopping into AM is going to give you the same options, so you could manually tune to stations that way instead. SiriusXM, hitting that is going to let you sort. You can enter a channel name, go into your sound settings and things like that. Straightforward. And then hitting this one gives you your sounds of nature, so more of those relaxing sounds instead. Bluetooth audio. Bluetooth audio, when you've got a phone connected, would let you stream audio that way. And then, as I mentioned, with a USB audio, if you had a USB stick strictly with MP3s on there, you'd also be able to listen to audio that way. Then, next up is going to be adding in a phone.
Bluetooth on your mobile device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
So all we're going to do, starting off on the iPhone side of things, jump into your settings. You're going to go into Bluetooth, and we're just waiting for Tucson to show up. There we go, pins match up, so let's go ahead and pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. And you can stop here, so you'd be able to stream audio and then make phone calls. But one of the nice things about the Tucson is that you do have Apple CarPlay. So that says, that's at unsuccessful because I said no when I first set the phone up. But you can see here, I've now got the option of using CarPlay, and it's wireless. It's also backwards compatible, so you'd be able to use a USB-C cable if you want to, and that's just done down the center stack. And when you use the USB-C cable, you have to use the one on the left-hand side, and then also make sure you tap the button so that you're using data transfer. But we've got wireless CarPlay capabilities, so let's just hit Use CarPlay. And it's going to take a second in order to be able to toggle CarPlay on. Okay, if this happens to you and it's kind of frozen up, if you just hit the home icon there, it's going to take a second, hit phone projection, tap on your phone. Here we go, a few seconds in, and CarPlay is technically connected, so let's launch in. Boom, we are fully connected to CarPlay. You can tap this in order to go to an icon view, tap again in order to get to this little home screen instead. But along the top, it's your current time, connection, and battery level, your most recently opened map, audio application, and miscellaneous application. You can hit there to go back to the icon view or swipe across as necessary instead. Now, this screen doesn't have factory navigation, but because we're connected over the iPhone right now, I've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze that are available. And they all work the exact same way. So on the iPhone side of things, Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze don't have pinch to zoom capabilities. So you can move around this way. You could then search for addresses this way instead if you'd like to. You can tap this in order to move the screen up or down or zoom in and out. My personal map, I love using Waze because as you go along, if there are speed traps that have been set up, people are pretty good at marking those off. And if you notice a speed trap or if you notice that there's a crash, hazards, things like that, you can mark it off on the map yourself too. Hopping back home brings you back to the screen, but there are so many apps that you can use. Hoopla's library app, Live One's a radio app. You can use YouTube Music as well. But as of right now, Apple CarPlay still does not support video playback. So it's strictly going to be audio. Podcasts are available, things like that. It's just that there's no actual video playback yet. You can kind of customize the screen a little bit. So you see the background there. If you tap on settings, that would let you turn on driving focus so that it's going to mute out notifications. You've got basic appearance and then wallpaper. So if you wanted to customize this in order to make it your own a little bit more, you'd have the flexibility of being able to do it. So small things. Then on the steering wheel, there's a voice command prompt there. So with your phone connected, whether that's over Bluetooth or through CarPlay, if you tap that button, that's going to launch into your Siri Assistant. And then down the middle of the screen there, there's also this little map button. So if you've got a phone connected over CarPlay or Android Auto, and you're in a screen that doesn't have factory nav, if you tap that map button, that's going to launch into maps on your phone instead. So pretty useful that you've got that available as an option. Hopping back home, it's straightforward. You do have the flexibility of being able to customize this layout a tiny little bit if you'd like. On your phone, what you're going to do is go into your settings, and then you're going to go into General, and then CarPlay. Find your vehicle. You can forget it, you can customize it, or turn it off. So let's customize, but let's say if you can't even get to this step because CarPlay is not working, check down in the description of this video for a walkthrough on some common CarPlay fixes that you can try. But let's say if you don't like the layout of the icons. See here, there's a little hamburger icon on the right side. You're just going to do a drag and drop. So if you wanted to have your maps and other apps along the very top instead, you can do that. So I've kind of adjusted the apps there. On the outside there, you can see that there's a minus button. So if there are certain apps that you know you're never going to listen to or you're never going to use, you can remove them from the screen. It saves them though, so you could add them back in if you wanted to. Then if you've played around with the layout here too much, like you don't like what you've done, on the top right side of your phone, there's a reset button. So you're going to hit reset, reset, and that's just going to bring the icons back to the factory default layout screen instead. If you hit the home button underneath the screen, that brings you back to this one. You can hit the little settings icon now in order to jump back into your device connections. So as of right now, the iPhone is connected over CarPlay. If you wanted to disconnect from CarPlay, you can just tap one of the other icons there. That's disconnecting from CarPlay, reconnecting over Bluetooth, strictly for phone calls. You can do phone calls or audio if you'd like to, or reconnect for CarPlay in order to get all of those features too. But that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Tucson. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on the screen, let's say if you're back home, there's a setup icon under the screen, or you can swipe across in order to get to your setup here. Just going to tap on device connections and then add
Turn
new.
Bluetooth on in your mobile device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Right, and perfect. And one of the nice things with Hyundai is that it just pulls up. So we're just going to hit connect. There we go. And it's asking, do I want to allow access to my contacts as well? Again, this is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. So you can just hit skip. And same thing for my text messages. And boom, it's connecting now. And after we're connected, so we're going to hit done. And look at that. So we are now connected. So you could stop here if you want to. So I'm connected over Bluetooth, so I can make phone calls, and then I can also stream audio. But there's also wireless Android Auto. Same idea, you can use a USB-C cable if you wanted to do backwards compatibility, but let's go ahead and use Android Auto. So let's hit yes there. Perfect, here we go. On the phone, it's asking me, do I want to allow Android Auto? Should take a second. This does happen sometimes. There we go, just hit the back button and then continue. And look at that. A few seconds in, and we are fully connected to Android Auto. So it said contacts download was unsuccessful because, again, I selected no when I went there. But you can see we've got this interesting little split screen along the outside, very similar to the CarPlay side. So you've got your current phone connection and battery levels, along with your maps and then a few other icons. You can tap there in order to get your voice assistant. You could do a button push on the steering wheel button in order to get the assistant for your phone that way instead. Then, if you hit the little icon along the bottom, that's going to give you a bunch of different apps that are available. But if you've got Waze installed on your Android device and it's not even showing up, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a little walkthrough explaining how you can get Waze on Android devices if it's not showing up properly for you. But if we hit the map icon, that brings us back to the screen. The icon along the bottom left, if you tap that, that's going to bring you into a split screen. Tap the map again to go full screen. But one thing I love about the Android Auto side of things, you've got full pinch to zoom capabilities. Google Maps, you've got options for searching there. You could go into a satellite versus a traditional view. You could edit things on the route, so avoiding motorways, toll roads, ferries, things like that. And then if we go back to this screen, so the icon layout here, you do have the flexibility of being able to adjust that. On your phone, what you're going to do is search for Android Auto. You're going to go into Android Auto settings. And when you do that, it's going to bring you up to this screen. Gives you a lot of options, but we're looking for customize launcher. So just tap there, gives you a bunch of options. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could remove it from the screen if you want to. And then you can also drag along the side if you wanted to adjust the layout here. But it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side. So in order for these changes to come into effect, hit the home icon under the screen. You're going to tap on this little settings icon here. You're going to get to this screen. All you're going to do is disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto. And when it launches in, back to the icon view, you can see the changes that we've made here have now come into effect. So it's not dynamic the same way it is on the iPhone side of things, but you can at least adjust it. Hopping back home again, if we hit that little settings icon, you've got both phones that are now connected. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So let's say if you wanted to connect to the Android for your phone calls, but the iPhone for media, you can do that. So you can kind of do a mix and match this way. There's a little hamburger button on the outside too, so it's who gets connection priority. So if you've got multiple phones that are in the vehicle, who's it going to try to connect to first for these? But that's how you set the phones up. You could then delete devices. You can select one, select all, and then just delete and yes. And a few seconds in, we've deleted both phones. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Hyundai Tucson. From here, there's some basic prompts, nothing exciting there, but Bluetooth system information is where you're going in order to change the vehicle name. So if you don't want it to be Tucson, you want it to be Bob's Ride, Sally's Ride, whatever the case may be, you can adjust it there. Phone projection settings are there as well, so you can either enable or disable Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You can see there all of the previous phones that have been connected to the vehicle. But that's how you set up a phone inside of the Tucson. Phone projection is specifically for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, so if you have either of those connected, that would be either an Android Auto or Apple CarPlay button. There's a valet mode available, vehicle diagnostic data, maintenance information, basic notifications, your online manual, and then a boatload of different vehicle settings too. So let's dive into these ones, starting off with your vehicle settings. So as you drive into these different settings, you'll notice that they're available a few different ways. So all of these things, driver assistance, drive mode, etc., you can get to it as an icon view instead, or through this list view, and then you can dive deeper into each individual option. So starting off with driver assistance and driving convenience, you've got your smart cruise control. And smart cruise control, you've got your buttons along the left-hand side of the steering wheel. Inside of the infotainment system, you've got some additional settings, so you can adjust your distance, acceleration, or the vehicle's reaction speed. Back to driver assistance and driving safety, series of options here too. So forward safety, the vehicle can let you know of a potential collision. And then from there, you've got your lane safety too. So it's going to keep you balanced in your lane as well. So it's essentially a lane keeping system. So lane keeping versus lane follow are two different ones. So lane safety is going to nudge you back into your lane versus lane centering. It's going to keep you nice and balanced in your lane. There's your blind spot safety system as well. So along the side view mirror, there is a little blind spot system. So you can see there, it's going to highlight and let you know. And it's also going to let you know inside of the cluster screen if you're on your driver assistance page. So you'll see on either side of the cluster that you'll get a blind spot warning depending on who's there. Safe exit, when you go to exit your vehicle, it can let you know of a potential obstacle there. Driver attention warning, if you've come down to a stop with this setting enabled and the car in front of you starts to drive away and you haven't started driving, it's going to give you a little notification inside of the cluster. Speed limit options, you can get a speed limit assist, yay or nay. So where that comes into play, inside of the cluster screen, when you've got the speed limit assist turned on, you'll notice that you've got your little speed sign along the very top there. So you've got speed assist, warning, and then a few others. So you can just get the information. So if you just want the speed sign information, that's available. You can get an actual warning if you're going a little bit too fast, and then you can also get an assist. And then with the speed limit assist on the steering wheel, you've got this button here. So let's say if the speed goes from 50 up to 60, you could push up to increase your speed. Let's say if it goes the opposite way, let's say if it goes from 60 down to 50, you could then push down in order to decrease your speed as well, automatically. That's also based off of an offset or a tolerance level. So are you okay with going up to 10 over or under the speed limit instead? So that one, a matter of preference. I personally am not a fan of that system, but if you love it, you can keep it on. There's your parking safety, cross traffic alert. As you're going to back up, if there's an obstacle behind you that you don't see, or even if you do see, it's going to give you a heads up and you're going to get a little beep as you go, giving you a heads up that there's somebody there. You've got your camera settings as well. So you've got your parking guidelines. So your parking guidelines are these little guys here, and they are dynamic. So as you go to rotate the wheel, you'll see that you've got your guidelines that are dynamic there, and park. And then rear view monitor. So at low speeds, when you switch from reverse into drive, it's going to keep that rear view camera on for a brief second. And then this one here is strictly going to be the rear camera. So in some versions of the Tucson, there is the option for a surround view monitor or a full 360 cam. It's just that this vehicle does not have that available as an option. Hopping back into setup, vehicle, driver assistance, and then our sound settings there. You've got some sound options that we've already seen. So your warning volumes, if you want it to be high, low, etc. And then all of these other options, which we've seen. That's the basics of your driver assistance. Next up is going to be drive mode. So down the center stack here, so you've got a series of different modes. So there's drive versus terrain modes. So if you just move up and down inside of the infotainment and through the cluster, it's going to jump you between a few different modes that are available. So there's normal versus sport versus my drive. If you hit that little drive terrain button there, that's going to switch you between drive modes or terrain modes. So snow, mud, or sand. All of these things are going to do something different. So they're going to play with traction control, stability control, things like that. Your sport mode is going to change out your shift point. So rather than, let's say it changes gears at 2000 RPM, it might wait and it'll shift at 4000 instead. So it gives you a sportier performance. You've got your My Drive mode, and that's where this one comes into play. So your My Drive mode is an option for you to do what you like. So Smart mode means that it's going to give you the best possible fuel economy, but maybe you want a sport powertrain, but normal steering. So your steering wheel won't be as stiff, but you've got different options that are available there too. So you can kind of select your own mode if you'd like to. From there, you've got different options for climate. I always just recommend keeping these the way that they are. So defog, defrost, dehumidify, things like that automatically. There are a series of different climate control settings that are down underneath the screen, which I'll show you last. You can adjust out some lights. Ambient light is available. It's not across the board, but with vehicles that have ambient light, you can select individual light colors. And then you can also select your own custom color. So if you like the look of a certain type of green, a certain type of red or orange or blue, whatever the case may be, you can adjust it out to whatever you'd like to. And the ambient light at night looks really, really good. There's also the option of linking it to your drive mode. So as you move into different drive modes, it's going to change up the ambient light color inside the vehicle. For your doors, when do you want to automatically lock or unlock the vehicle? As you start to drive, when you go to shift, same idea with unlock. Do you want the doors to automatically unlock when you shift to park, or do you want them to not automatically unlock? And there's your power liftgate, so you can turn that one off. How fast or slow do you want the liftgate to open up? You can also set unique heights. So do you want the liftgate fully open? Or if your garage is a little bit higher or lower, you can adjust it out that way. Or you can select your own unique height instead. So all you do is raise it up however high or low you'd want, push and hold the button on the right side of the liftgate, and it won't open up past that point instead. And then there are a few other unique key fob tricks that you can do inside of the ride. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how these ones work. So in order to use it, make sure you're locked first, then go for a walk. So you got to get a few feet away for a few seconds, and as long as the feature is enabled, just going to walk up towards the back end, and with the key fob on you, listen to this. So you could push the lock button at this point in order to pause it, but you've got smart trunk. So the trunk opens up there automatically, and then you can button push there if you wanted to close as well. It's actually pretty neat. One thing to point out is that when the vehicle's locked, so I'll wait for that door to close. Okay, vehicle's locked. The fuel door is also locked, so you have to be unlocked in order to get inside. And then there's one other neat key fob trick that you can do. So if you take the unlock button, you're gonna push and hold. So you're gonna go push and hold, watch this. Release, deposit part way, push and hold again, and that's gonna continue the cycle. I love it. I wish that it was all 4 windows opening up, and it would be cool if you could roll them back up again, but at least rolling them down to air out the vehicle is pretty useful. Your digital key is available, so you've got the option of a little key card, and you can also use your phone as a key. Unfortunately, with this being a press vehicle, I can't showcase those features, but if you want to see how they're done, Hyundai does have a video available, so I'll link to that one down in the description of this video. There are a series of convenience settings too, so rear occupant alert when you go to turn the vehicle off. If the back door has been opened, it's going to give you a heads up to check the back seats. If you're changing out oil yourself, you can adjust that out. There is a wireless charge pad that's available for the vehicle. You could disable the wireless charger down the middle here, so if you didn't want to use the wireless charge pad at all. And then there are a few different indicator types. So what kind of lights do you want to get for that wireless charge pad? And then you've also got your right wiper when in reverse. So with that enabled, if you've got your windshield wipers going, you put the vehicle into reverse, it's automatically going to turn on the rear wiper for you as well. And that's all of your vehicle settings. As I mentioned here, you can dive into all of these different settings, either using the icon views instead. And then sound settings. So many options. So we've already seen all of these different sound settings. Into device connection, so if you had phones connected, changing out your vehicle name. User profiles is where you're going in order to change different users out. So if you wanted to change it to user 1, user 2, or your individual guest profile, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do that. Back to our setup, and let's see, screen layout gives you a few other options. So inside of the cluster screen, there are a few different looks that you can go for. So we've got the classic look as of right now. You can change that out to a modern look if you want something that's a little bit different. And then you can take that up a notch by going into a more simplified view or simplified look instead. So a series of different looks, and then even when you're in those different gauge styles, as you jump between the different drive modes, it's going to change up the look very, very slightly. So you've got the option of adjusting these out. I personally am a bigger fan of the classic look, but that comes down to a matter of preference. And then you can also lock it into an individual style. So you can link it to the drive mode. So as you go into a normal mode versus sport, it's going to look slightly different. But let's say if you love the look of the sport mode, but you want to get the features and the benefits of the normal mode, you can lock it out to any of these other styles instead if you'd like to. I personally think that just looks a little bit more aggressive. So you can adjust that. There's a screensaver that's available. So when you go to turn the screen off, you could have it as a clock face if you'd like to. You can adjust it out into anything else. So you've got different watch faces available, or if you prefer a digital clock instead, turn the screen off, and you can see we've got our current date and time. There's a split screen that's available. If you had factory navigation, you'd have some additional options here, but your split screen is going to be, if we're let's say on FM for an example, your split screen there. So you can see your latitude, longitude, your clock face there instead. And next up is display. So display, you can adjust the brightness of the display this way. So if you wanted it darker, brighter, etc. There are some options for your camera, for your display. So again, we've already seen that one. So our rear view camera. Blue light filter is available too. So later on at night, it's going to essentially remove the eye strain from the vehicle. You can have it come on automatically or at a set time that you choose instead. There are a few different buttons that are available too. So you've got your custom audio button down the middle. So it's that little guy there. So when you push that button, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to open phone projection, quiet? Do you want it to turn the display off or do nothing instead? Personally, a bigger fan of the display off is you can push and hold that button to turn the display off if you'd like to, but you can also now press that button in order to be able to toggle it on off. And there are 2 unique steering wheel buttons. So you've got your custom button here, so your star icon. What's that one going to do? Is it going to turn the media off? Is it going to put you into quiet mode? Do you want nothing to happen? So if we push that button now with it on home, it's going to bring us back to the home screen instead. Hopping back into our individual buttons, there's also the mode button. And that's this one on the steering wheel. So when you hit that button, you can have it jump between all of your available sources. So if you always listen to either AM or FM, you can just have those ones selected. If you tend to listen to all of these other sources, you can adjust this out to be whatever you'd like it to be. and then the up and down switch there. So when you hit that up down, what's it going to do? So either change favorites or change station frequency instead. There's some different options for the cluster, so adjusting the brightness of the cluster screen. Your theme selection, so and you can get to these things a few different ways. Your content selection, when you start the vehicle up in colder conditions, it can give you a little heads up that the roads might be icy. And then you've got a welcome sound when you first go to turn the vehicle on. Blue Link is available, so an app for your phone. And then there are a series of different general settings as well. So you've got your basics of software information. You can do an update this way if you'd like to. There's system information here, so you can see what's new, modem info, but your date and time is there too. So you've got certain things that are grayed out, and that's because you're in the auto mode. So if you toggle that off, you can then adjust your date and time that way if you'd like. Moving back, let's just go automatic. Do you prefer to be in 12 versus 24-hour mode? So do you like that military time? And you can even lock out your time zone. Where that comes into play is if you live somewhere where you straddle a time zone and it constantly flips you from one time zone to the other, you can permanently lock it in to any of these options instead. And then do you want to adjust out for daylight savings time, yay or nay? You can adjust out your language, so English, French, Spanish, or Korean. You can adjust out the keyboard type. And then there's also the option of adjusting out your measurement units. One of the nice things about it being a digital cluster is that when you go to adjust this out, so either miles or kilometers, it adjusts everything. So it's going to adjust what's going on with your speed, what's going on with your current odometer and things like that. You can adjust this out as well. So do you want to be in either Celsius or Fahrenheit? And where that comes into play is underneath the screen. So you can see there, we've got our current climate with us being in Celsius. So you can adjust out to Celsius or Fahrenheit. And then your fuel economy units are available there. Again, dependent on whether you're in miles or kilometers instead. So Canada versus US. You can change it out to the PSI, kPa, or bar for your tire pressure. With media, do you want media to be off when you go to start the vehicle up? So if you've got the radio cranked and then you turn the car off, with this one turned on, when you turn the car off, restart, there won't be media playing. And then do you want the media to continue playing for a few minutes after you turn the vehicle off? And then you can reset. Now, I'm currently in the guest profile, so I can't do a full factory reboot. You'd have to jump into either user profile 1 or 2 in order to do that. But you can at least delete the guest profile information. And then there's also a way of doing a soft reboot instead. So a full factory reset would wipe the whole screen out. It would get rid of presets, any phones that you've connected and things like that. I'll show you the soft reboot in just a second. And then just underneath the screen, you've got a series of other options. So you've got your volume rocker. Push and hold that button in order to toggle the screen off. Push again to turn it back on. You could do a hot button press to get back to your home screen. There's a map view, so if your phone was connected, you jump right into your phone maps. You can search the vehicle for any setting. So if you had a certain setting that you wanted to disable or enable, you'd have the flexibility to do it. You can hit media in order to get to this media screen, so AM, FM, or SiriusXM. If you push again, that's going to change you out to all of your available options instead. Got your 4-way blinkers. You can seek between stations this way. There's your unique button. There's a setup option in order to jump into all of your individual settings. And then there's also your little tuning rocker there. And then let's say if the screen is giving you problems. So Android Auto's not working, Apple CarPlay's not working, there are some other issues, the screen's glitching out. You could do that full factory reset if you wanted to. That's the last thing that you should try. The first thing that you should try is just underneath the screen here. So you can see right underneath the setup button on the right-hand side, there's a tiny little button, a little bit tricky to see. But if you take a paper clip, you're just going to insert it into that button and push, boom. Soft reboots the screen. So it's going to take a few seconds in order for it to cycle through and come back on, but that's going to solve the majority of issues that you might be facing. Like I said, if your phone's not connecting properly, if navigation's not working, if you had it in your screen or any other issues, you can do a soft screen reboot by doing that. After a few minutes, it's going to launch you right back into your screen. And while that's loading up, so just underneath the screen here, so you do have dual zone climate control available inside of the ride. If the passenger side is set to something different than the driver, you can tap that button in order to sync the passenger to the driver's side. There's heated first row seats with the option for ventilated, so that button would be there. Heated steering wheel. You can adjust your settings there. Have it going to your windshield face or feet. You can toggle the system off. You've got your front defroster, rear defroster, turn on your air conditioning, air circulation. Underneath, you've got 2 power points. So this one here is going to be your data transfer one or charging instead. The one on the right side here is strictly going to be for charging. And then there's also a 12-volt power point down there. Right here, you've got all of your individual mode buttons. So you've got your drive versus terrain mode, so button push in to change it out. There's the auto hold setting as well. So with the auto hold setting turned on, what that one does is that if you are driving the vehicle and you have yourself in drive, you take your foot off the brake, the vehicle is not going to move. So when you come down to a complete stop with auto hold enabled, it essentially holds you in place. The auto start stop, that's the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine if you come down to a complete stop for an extended period. There's also your downhill brake control, and then a button in order to get to your rear view camera. There are a few different speaker choices available inside of this ride, and this one has the upgraded Bose speaker system. So let's hop into media for a second here, so some USB music, and we're gonna listen to some songs, and it's just coming right out of the microphone here. So let's go ahead and start off. So if you're listening over, or like using headphones, the sound here is fantastic. And then let's listen to something that's more like rock rappy type of instead. Hey, hey, hey. There we go.
I got all this potential that's deep inside of me, but they hate when you're successful because they try to be. They sit there being just meant to be.
Okay. The audio there, it is so good. Bose audio systems are fantastic, and the audio, like the cabin here is not that big, but it's pumping here. So the 6-speaker is good. I've been in Tucsons in the past and other Hyundai vehicles with the 6-speaker. It's good, but the 8-speaker Bose that you get, I think is just a step above. I personally love it, but you do have different options available that are trim level specific. Glove box inside of the ride is non-lockable. Got a little storage shelf there. There's an auto dimming rear view mirror with garage door opener. So if you've got a garage door at home, you can program it in. From there, there's a tow mode, SOS mode in case you need help, with some cabin control lights as well. And then you might find the option for a little sunroof inside of the ride. So not full panoramic, but I mean, it opens things up. Decent amount there. Not bad. That's okay. From there, you've got a visor that has a little ticket receipt holder on the inside there. There's a vanity mirror and then a little light up overhead too. And then this little feller stretches out, blocking all of the sun that might be hitting your face. The overall visibility inside of the car is good. Not too much blockage there from the pillar either. There would actually, another thing, you might find the option for a head-up display too, again in the highest trim level of the ride. But hold on, let's get the seat set back up again. There we go, the way that I would traditionally drive. Love that assist handle, useful in case, but second ride of the Tucson, there is technically the option for second row heated seats as well. It's strictly going to be in the highest trims, but you've got a nice gloss highlight along the door with a little bottle holder there. The seats have a very similar style to the first row. Ooh. All right, space-wise back here. So with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've got a good amount of knee space and foot space. Let's hold on, let's go down here. Knee space and foot space is good. Head space is good too. Now, one thing, the seats are incredibly upright right now. So there's a lever along the side. So that little guy that you'd use to fold the seat down, you can pull it. Oh, in order to give the seats a great recline too. And it's obviously a 40-60 bench, but I mean, reclined, oh, that's really, really comfortable. Oh, that's nice. But yeah, there's a ton of space inside of the ride. Like up overhead, I'm sitting at about the same as the first row, like 3.5, roughly 4 inches of head space. So taller people, you'll probably be okay back here. Feature-wise, you've got down low a few USB Type-C power points, some vent controls. There's a mat pocket behind just the passenger side, so nothing along the driver's side. You've got a handle along the passenger side, little light control up overhead with a handle and a hook along the driver's side. If you need it, all of your anchor points are there. Top tether points are behind the seats with some cup holders built right into the seats as well. And then middle seat wise, so there's a little hump in the very middle. Ooh. And let's get that seat back a little bit. So reclined it a bit. All right, so hold on. With the seat reclined, I can actually fit in the middle row, or the middle seat here. and I still have a good amount of space, like 3-ish, a little under 3 inches of headspace. So not a ton of space by any stretch. But if you've got kids that are bigger, like I'm 6 feet tall, a little bit broader shoulder, it's gonna be tight for 3 full-size adults back here. But if you've got kids, shorter family members, friends that you don't really care about too much, you're gonna stick them back here anyways. There's more than enough space for distance trips. But yeah, I personally wouldn't want to get stuck in the middle seat though. But it's not bad back here. Plenty spacious. I do like that there's heated second row seats. If your Tucson has it, it would just be the outboard seat. So the middle seat here would just never be heated. The rear end styling of the Tucson is pretty bold, especially when you get into the design of the lamps. You've got black bezels that trace all the way throughout. That gloss black highlight follows throughout the middle. And then outside of that, you're not gonna find too much technology-wise back here in the majority of trims. You're always gonna have the backup camera and the rear wiper. The rear wiper is hidden, which is kind of neat, but outside of that, majority of trims, you won't find the reverse park sensing system. It's gonna be available in that higher trim level of the ride. You can tow inside of the Tucson. If you're pulling a trailer without brakes, you're maxing out at 1,650 pounds versus a trailer that has brakes, you're maxing out at 2,000 pounds. So if you're looking for a Hyundai that can pull more, you might have to look at another option instead. But otherwise, small boats, trailers, things like that, you'd be covered off here. Getting into the trunk of the Tucson can be done so many different ways. There's a button to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. You can use the key fob to do it. And the very bottom under the plate here, there's also a button that you can push. Then there's also the option for the smart liftgate. So as long as the feature's enabled, car is locked, you have to get a few feet away for a few seconds, just go for a walk. And walking up to the back end, as long as the fob's on you, you can hear that beeping. You can hit the lock button to pause it at this point, but other than outside of that, it's gonna pop up. Love the feature. It's way better than the foot activated because if those sensors are covered in snow, ice, mud, etc., wouldn't open up. But inside of the trunk, there's nothing really off to the right side. There's a woofer and then there's a release for the second row seat. Along the left, there's a 12-volt power point and another release. You've got the carpeted mat back here, and lifting it up, you're going to find the tire mobility kit. So no spare tire inside of this ride. So if you puncture a tire, you can try to seal it up yourself. But one of the nice things about being a Hyundai owner is that you have access to roadside assistance. Call an 800 number, a tow will come out and help you out with tire changing, fuel delivery, lockout, winching services, and so many other things. Time limited offer, but it is pretty neat that that's available. And folding down the second row seats is a manual process from the trunk area of the ride. So you've got a switch along the right side you can pull in order to fold down the right side of the bench, and then the individual seat along the driver's side too. You might have to move that first row seat forward a little bit in order to get those seats down, but there is a solid amount of space inside of the ride. Then looking at the cargo measurements, specifically behind the first row, they're going from right where that liftgate would close to just in behind the little armrest between the first row seats. So if the driver's seat was backwards or forwards a little bit more, you might have a little bit of extra space, but there is a pretty solid amount of space inside of this trunk. Now, when it comes to lifting the seats up, once they're down, they're actually locked down into place. So what you have to do is hop inside. There's a lever along the side there, the one that you'd use in order to fold the seat down. You just pull that in order to raise the seat back up again. And then closing the lift gate, all you're gonna do, hit the button along the top, you're set to go. Filling up fuel inside of the Tucson is done just along the driver's side. And one nice thing, when the car's locked, the fuel door is also locked. So you have to be unlocked in order to open this up. And it is a capped system as well, which is useful. Looking at real world fuel economy inside of the Tucson so far, so I picked it up, drove it about 60 kilometers, 65-ish kilometers picking it up, and mostly highway driving. Lucked out today because there wasn't much traffic. I was averaging about 7-ish liters per 100, which I mean is pretty solid for highway driving. You're obviously going to end up using more fuel if you're just regular city driving. If you remote start your car in the winter time, you're going to use up a little bit more in comparison as well. But the overall fuel economy numbers have either been on par or slightly better than what Hyundai said to expect inside of the ride. Now, looking at the fuel quality inside of the ride, it doesn't matter if you're in the regular 2.5 liter or in one of the hybrids. Minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just regular fuel. So 87 octane is all you need to use inside of this vehicle. If you're towing, there is the argument of using a higher octane fuel. You just don't need to do it. With fuel prices the way they are right now, just do yourself a favor, save yourself some cash at the pumps, and just use a regular 87 instead. And that was everything you needed to know about the Hyundai Tucson. You can find all of the build details for this Hyundai down in the description, along with links off to Hyundai Canada and US. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful, and until I see you next time, take care. Underneath the hood, the traditional hybrid is a step up, and then the plug-in hybrid is a step up from that. And the plug-in hybrid, obviously, oh, I like it way better than the foot activated, because if the sensors are covered in snow, mice, no. Covered in mice. Oh, what have you been doing?